I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. Our next scheduled meeting is September 15th. This is a hybrid meeting, which means it's Zoom as well as in person. We have Dr. Z, who is on Zoom, so I have to acknowledge that he's on Zoom. He's a voting member on this board. It will be uploaded to, well, it's live on YouTube, but also this meeting that's on cable will also be uploaded to YouTube. I would ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. This is the second meeting in a row that we haven't had to have a moment of silence, so that's pretty good news. Our first agenda item for scheduled appointments is a certificate of recognition for Sister Tulia Giraldo. From the Board of Selectmen, the certificate of recognition. We, the undersigned, do hereby recognize Sister Tulia Giraldo, Dominican sister of the presentation, to whom we extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation for her life of faithful service, as she celebrates more than 70 years of her religious profession in the United States Vice Province of the Dominican Sisters. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the great seal of the town of Dayton to be affixed on this 18th day of August 2021, and it's signed by the Board of Selectmen, Ken Pacheco, Lenny Hull, and Selectman Zografis. I will be giving this to her tomorrow, along with former Selectman Nancy Goulart. I'll ask for a motion to approve that certificate of recognition.
So moved.
Somebody want a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Roll call. I'll have to do a roll call. Lenny?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Ken Pacheco is an aye. The next certificate of recognition is to Kenneth Raymond. This is also from the Board of Selectmen, certificate of recognition. We, the undersigned, do hereby recognize Kenneth Raymond for his more than 20 years of dedicated service to the town of Dayton and its residents as Chief of Staff to State Representative Patricia Haddad. Your efforts as a key partner between Dayton and our state government have had a significant impact on many Dayton projects and initiatives, the successful results of which will continue to have a lasting benefit to our community for years to come. On behalf of our small town with a big heart, we extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the great seal of the town of Dayton to be affixed on this 18th day of August 2021. It's signed by the Board of Selectmen of the town of Dayton, Kenneth Pacheco, chairperson, Lenny Hull, clerk, and Dr. Z, also signed as a member of our board. I would ask for a motion to approve the certificate of recognition.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Roll call. Mr. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Ken Pacheco is also an aye. So I want to congratulate you, Mr. Raymond, for the great work you've done. Mrs. Haddad, would you like to speak? Or you, Mr. Raymond, would you like to speak first?
Well, all I want to say is, things are going to get worse for you guys. No, I'm not kidding. Ken's been my brain and my right-hand man for a long time, so I am so grateful that you've recognized him. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to say that I've had a great time working with people of Dayton. I've had a great time with the numbers of boards of selectmen that I've worked with over the 20-plus years. Interestingly enough, the very first project I worked on with the town of Dayton, first day, was the demolition of the old and the construction of the new Dayton-Berkeley Bridge, which was incidentally the very longest project I've ever worked on with the state. And my very last project, my last few days before I retired in July, was working with Michael, who I knew at the State House, which you all know, on putting together the American Recovery Act funding package for the town of Dayton on the projects that you're looking for. So, as you know, I'm very appreciative. As you know, I'm not far. I'm just down the street in my role as Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Chair of the Board of Trustees, the Bristol Aggie. So, and you know what we're doing over there. So, and you've been there many, many times, so you know. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
Michael, you will. And Tommy, is Tommy still here?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Tommy's been great.
Dr. Z?
I just wanted to point out that many residents over the course of my tenure the last 5 years, I can't tell you how many have come up to me to just comment on how responsive, in particular, Mr. Raymond has been in State Rep Haddad's office, but in general, the entire office. I can't tell you how many people have said how responsive you've been and helpful you've been with different state matters, unemployment benefits. It really, really does go a long way. It really does matter. And I just want to thank you for your service. I don't know how many thank yous get back to you, Mr. Raymond, but we do get them. And I just wanted to pass them along to you and thank you.
Thank you. As a public servant yourself, you know that very few thank yous get handed out. But thank you. That's very, very kind of you to pass that on.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Very appreciative.
State Representative Haddad, would you like to speak?
Oh, no, as I said, he's been my brains and my right-hand man for 20 years, so if there's backsliding, you'll just have to sort of whip me into shape. But thank you.
So you're not going to volunteer any work to work for the state rep?
I've been involved in public service and government for 38 years on local, regional,
Sure.
and state level. I have no desire to be elected or go to the federal level. And I'm just doing a lot of stuff that you never really have an opportunity to do, but mostly spend time with my family because all of you know there's a lot of time that you absolutely lose with your family. So that's mostly what I'm doing at this point. And of course, the Aggie construction project with 7 buildings is keeping me busy.
Thank you. I will give you this certificate.
Thanks.
They just need a picture with the 2 selectmen anyway.
Sure.
With the third overlooking on Zoom.
Sure. Where do you want to face them?
I know, but having fun. Just
What's
watch
the
the
end?
Yep.
You want to do it in English so we can get.
Oh, yeah, for the Zoom.
Yes.
Over here and this, no?
It'd be kind of hard.
I'll be near the wire. Want me to hold this? Here we go. I'm used to writing these, not getting these.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is Mark Pacheco, our town clerk. He's going to talk about the 2020 census and how it impacts our number of precincts. I don't know if anybody's seen the stats, but in the past 10 years, I believe, of all the towns of Bristol County, Dayton has gained the most percentage-wise as far as population, over 1,000 additional residents in town. So this is going to require, my understanding is 3 precincts instead of the 2 that we presently have right now.
Thank you for having me. So tonight I'm just here for informational purposes only. You touched on it perfectly, Ken. Last week the 2020 census results were posted, and yes, we did grow a lot. We are now at 8,101 residents as of April of 2020. So that's a growth of 1,015 residents from 10 years prior in April of 2010. So an easy way to remember that is 101 people every year the town's growing by. So I like that stat. Unfortunately, what that means is we have to grow to 3 precincts. Once you go over 4,000 residents, you have to add a precinct. So I'm here just to tell you that news. There's a local election district review commission in the state, and they require a local adoption by the Board of Selectmen. And they're basically the ones that work on those precinct maps with the town. So they've worked with us on that already. It's only a draft version at this point, so I'd be coming back to you guys in late September, early October, looking for adoption of the map. So it's reviewed. I've looked at it with the planning board, Kerry Easterday. Basically you look at any future growth of the town, like housing projects. The 2 main ones, Strawberry Fields and Forest Hills, are not large enough to really impact the numbers. It's less than 1% each one, which isn't enough to skew the numbers of the precincts. So, but that was looked into. They also look at, different races, how if anybody's votes would be diluted. And then they also look at tails of the precincts. Basically, they should be square blocks, as close to square as you can get. We had one little outlier, which I worked with the state to get fixed. And this is an additional cost to the taxpayer. 3 precincts means more election workers, voting equipment. So that's, I guess, unfortunate. As a taxpayer myself, I wish there was a way around it. I did contact the state to see if there's a way to appeal it, because we're only at 101 residents over, for the 4,000. There's no appeal process. That's what I was told. If you try to submit 2 precincts, it would be rejected. So we have to just follow the law and move forward. So it's a fact. We have to go to 3 precincts. Lastly, I just want to say I did share this with all department heads. I want to be as inclusive as I can. And we have 6 weeks or so if there's any questions to wrap it up, so I can come back to you guys in October and we would vote to adopt it.
So my only question is, I've read everything that you provided us with. My only question is, are we still going to be able to have the election for the town in the same spot with the 3 precincts? We don't have to have it some other, 1 precinct in another area?
That's a good question. I think we can make it work where it currently is. I would guess I'd have to work with the Board of Health and see if it would work. I would really like not to go to another location. We don't have the resources. It'd have to be in 1 location, but I think we could make that work. And I guess I have plenty of time now to get you a definite between now and October. When I come back, I will have that answer for sure.
Selectman Hull?
Mr. Pacheco, you mentioned that we cannot appeal this. Are they offering any money as far as grants or aid? Because it's no secret that the population in Massachusetts has shifted, but we haven't lost throughout the state.
Right.
They have to be aware that the shift has impacted more towns than it has helped in regards to numbers. People are moving out of the cities to the burbs. They're moving into the Daytons. And as a result, the smaller towns that don't have as large of an industrial base and don't have as large of a tax support base are going to be more impacted than a Fall River or a Taunton and Attleboro, whose numbers are probably going to go down. And the impact to services will be less than it will be for us. Example, schools. The more children that come to the district, you can multiply that by $9,000 a year per child. Whereas Taunton is losing that $9,000 expense, Dayton is probably incurring that expense. So as a result, I was curious as if there was any way the state would help us with this additional expense.
So they set out basically guidelines to the process, what to expect. One of those guidelines, they do talk about cost, because, you know, not only is this, we have a cost to let all residents know that their precinct has moved. There's a cost for mailing. We have to give a clear description of the bounds and of the map, so there's a cost there. And then if any voting equipment or what have you, getting the word out to the public, there's a cost. And they, in those guidelines, it does say it's the responsibility of the municipality, those costs. I think it would not hurt to reach out to the state and ask if that is the case for everybody. But the guidelines do say it's the responsibility of the town.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Z, do you have any questions?
Yes. So Selectman Hull, we have the same brain again. So that was my first question, was if there was any grant funding or anything to support at least the equipment. I think we would have to buy another like ballot machine, right?
That's another issue. Our ballot machines are kind of antiques. They don't even make parts for them anymore, so they'd probably all get upgraded at the same time. And
Okay.
yes, we need an additional.
And then my immediate concern is, and I apologize, this may have been covered, the audio, it's a little hard, so I can't hear every word that you're saying, Mr. Clerk, so I do apologize, but when does this go into effect, the additional precinct? And if it's FY '22, are there monies in the election budget to support the additional precinct? The current FY '22 budget that was adopted at the annual town meeting in June.
So it would go into effect December 31st of this year, unfortunately.
And is there monies in the current FY '22 elections budget to support any costs needed for the additional precinct that needs to be created?
I think for postage, we would be fine, letting all the residents know in the mailing. I have no idea what to expect for the cost of a legal description of the bounds. You know, obviously I have a budget for that, so I think we'll be okay.
Okay, well, obviously, since there's no way around it, you know, I, myself as a selectman, I will support us finding monies, because obviously we have to. But I would like us, if possible, to look into if there is any way that we can offset the purchase of like the 3 additional ballot machines that you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank
Selectman
you.
Hull? Selectman Hull?
In light of what you just said about increase in costs and how old our ballot machines are, probably be a good thing and to give you time so you're not scrambling come budget prep time, if you could put together a proposal of what you're going to need and some costs. Yeah, I mean, some cost comparisons.
Absolutely.
So we-
So there's only 2 companies you can buy ballot machines from. So there's LHS and there's ES&S. That's it. And they're, they are vetted through the state and they're vetted on the federal level. So I've already got quotes for the town.
Great.
They'd be right around the $30,000 mark, a little less than that. And that's for, right now we have 2 ballot scanners and a spare in case one breaks, which, if it breaks, it's gonna break on election day.
Right.
So we would go to 3 scanners and a spare. So it includes the cost for all of that.
So it would be around $30,000,
It's around 30,000. That's rounding up. It'd be a little less.
which is an additional expense that wasn't in your budget this year.
Right. It would be a one-time expense, but then going forward, if you have 3 precincts, it is more poll workers too, you know, but.
So is this something you're going to have to go before the town at the special town meeting?
For the voting equipment, yes, but for the additional precincts I'd be going before you
Yeah.
again.
Okay.
I think so. Any other questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Clerk, I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, the next scheduled appointment is Todd Pillings, the Health Agent, Board of Selectmen's Board of Health Planning discussion.
Hi, good evening, Board. My name is Tom Pires, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. That was years ago, Chairman of the Board of Health. At your request, we're meeting tonight to discuss, I believe, staffing and future staffing of the Board of Health going forward. I'm going to be very brief because I feel that our time would be better served by us responding to whatever questions you may have, because I'm sure you know what we do and what we are doing and the progress we've made in light of COVID. Some of the things I'm going to be reading, actually, this first paragraph, and this is for the benefit of our residents and our public. We do many things, and the conception or the misconception that all we do is have 3 restaurants to inspect within the town, which is far from what we do. So I'll start with this. This is actually in the annual town report. And for those that have read it, it's going to be a little redundant. The Board of Health administers health inspections in food establishments, tenements, condemnations, sanitation inspections, and enforcement of Title V, including soil evaluations, animal inspections, tobacco control, stormwater bylaw administration, town nurse functions, including emergency immunization dispensing, site planning and operation, health nuisance abatement, abandoned houses, solid waste disposal, recycling, household hazardous waste disposals. We also are involved with EEE and West Nile, and I would like to comment, for those who haven't seen it yet, as of yesterday, we had a positive West Nile virus. I'm sure it was probably more than one mosquito, but there were positive tests up in the northwest quadrant of the town, which is around Maple Swamp and all of that area up Chestnut Street, so forth, so on. So I just wanted to put that out there, since hopefully you get a better viewing than we do. Throughout the COVID pandemic, the Board of Health was instrumental in advising, guiding, and assisting the 4 Dayton schools, which includes the Bristol County Agricultural High School, on protocol and procedures. During this period, all governor's orders were monitored for compliance and enforcement if necessary, with meetings consistently being held with school administration, staff, and nurses to ensure the safety of our children. Although face coverings became an issue at times, the Board of Health only enforced the minimum requirement of the governor's orders, nothing more, nothing less. Moving on, the town continues to realize substantial annual savings from the in-house review of stormwater and septic plans in lieu of a third party, as we did for many years prior. Finally, as most people should know, the Board of Health agent and the Board of Health members are available 24/7, 365 days a year. Some of our future plans include the online permitting, which should save a substantial amount of time, I believe. Oversight of all aspects of transfer station operations to better manage the budget. And we also want to begin a review of local regulations for accuracy, consistency, and compliance with Mass General laws and regulations. So that's where we're at. I don't want to bore you with a lot of facts, numbers and so forth of permits and so forth. So we're here to answer some questions. Moving forward, either myself or Mr. Pilling.
So, just so you know that I'm not going to be prepared to make a decision tonight, but I would ask that we put a placeholder for the special town meeting, that this may have to come up before the special town meeting. My question is, what does the Board of Health agent do that's different from the Board of Health committee itself? You and the other chairperson, the other two members, and what's the separation of, is there any separation of duties and responsibilities?
Well, the Board of Health agent is usually the primary go-to for any complaint or inspection or whatever. I have been out because I am qualified on some. I've been out to perk tests. I'm not certified, but I'm able to myself watch as the water goes down during the perk test. I'm able to do food inspections if necessary, and housing if necessary, minimum standard housing. The agent is just an all-around, everything that, I believe that everything that happens in this town is in some form or shape related to public health. And, you know, we're lucky to have someone, as I mentioned before, who is able, with his skills and abilities, that we can save a lot of money by utilizing his skills. And that is something I think we should explore going forward. You know, our agent is a certified PE, and, you know, there are times when that may come, if he's willing to do that. It's not in his job description, that we, I think, maybe want to take advantage of that. But, of course, that's a lot of negotiations in the future, so.
Selectman Hull, you have any questions?
Yes. Actually, it's not a question, it's a statement. On March 3rd of this year, on budget negotiations with the Board of Health, Dr. Segoffis said that he would support the recommendation of the Wage Study Committee on this very issue. And that's, unless he's changed
Well,
his view
the
on
wage
that.
study is for.
Excuse me, let me just finish
Okay.
my thought. That is going to be my position on this.
Selectman Hull. So I just wanted to add, I believe that night I misspoke. And what I was referring to that night was the wage study that's being done on the clerical union. That would not include the health agent's position. It's a non-union position. So I just wanted to clarify that statement.
Okay, thank you.
And I stand by that statement, by the way. I'm not saying I'm not. But it just doesn't apply to the discussion of the health agent's expanding roles and responsibilities.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chairman Pyers.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing that Dr. Z said, that the great work that Roz is doing, I've known her for a long time. She was our administrative assistant on the ZBA. She's doing an excellent job, but the wage study is going to deal with her.
Yeah, I'm not discussing,
Yeah, it's just that, well,
tonight
that's
we're
part of,
discussing staffing and not,
it's just that the wages came up on the information
yeah.
that you gave us, so that's what I'm looking at. Dr. Z, do you have any questions?
I guess my question is, so I read the entire report. I thank the Board of Health for putting together this comprehensive report, and it was very illuminating. It was very big picture, and I really appreciated it. My question is really more a nuts and bolts question. What do we feel collectively would be fair compensation for the role of the health agent, and how much of an increase would that be over what was approved at the annual town meeting?
was that a question for me?
Anyone?
Okay. Prior to the annual town meeting, there was discussion of salary and wages. So in conjunction, because of what was going on with change of town administrators and other things that were happening regarding the budget, I think it was not an opportune time to do what we were looking for as far as wages and duties and responsibilities. So there was some discussion between our current town administrator, the finance committee, myself, and Mr. Pilling, that we would back off the request for special town meeting, and it was somewhere in the vicinity of $70,000, which is $14,000 over what he's currently making. And we would try to meet on mutual ground so we could move forward to the special town meeting with a similar request with new duties and responsibilities. So the bottom line of your question, it would be the vicinity of $14,000.
That sounds about right from what I recall, Chairman Pires. Thank you.
Selectman Hull?
I was wondering if either the Board of Health or Mr. Mullen could provide a list, chart if you will, of comparable wages of health agents in the same socio-demographic graphics of communities in the Commonwealth?
Mr. Hall, we've submitted that prior to the, I was gonna bring it with me and I didn't. We submitted that prior to the annual town meeting,
Okay.
and we can submit it again. There was a package we submitted to the Board of Selectmen and
I
Town Administrator. Mr. Pilling is the lowest paid health agent out of how many communities? 8, 10? I think we did 8. Yeah, so he was the lowest paid. And the health department is the lowest paid department within the town of Dayton. I don't know if you knew that. And we have the least staff. So, we have a big job with a few people and a short budget.
So I think that information, Selectman Hull, was presented to us, I think before you became a selectman, so I don't think you've,
No,
I don't
because it
think
was
you've
in March that there was
yeah, I
discussion.
don't think you saw that information, but we were given that information, but it was prior to you being on the board.
Just in
Another question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You had another question?
Well, it's a statement, because I don't want either yourself or Todd to get the wrong impression. Fair is fair, and right is right. And I will do based on the input, the data, the information that I get. And as someone new on the board, I don't evaluate Todd. I don't see him on a day-to-day basis. You work with him more closely, you make a recommendation to us. I have to represent the taxpayers as well. So I know on this issue, having that chart will help me a lot in making my
Well, there
decision.
should be a package, I suppose, with Mrs. Brady. Did we still have that package? Yeah. So a package would be available if you want us to do, we're short of time, I'm not sure we can do another survey with.
Oh, no, you don't have, but you have that
Yes, we
information.
do have the survey,
Okay.
yes,
So you can just pass it on to me and,
absolutely.
Yeah, and also in there are the salaries of the departments and salaries of department heads. And there's a lot of information in there, I think, that once you look at it.
I will make a comment in regards to that, and it's a caution that former FinCom head Ed Schwartz made to all the department heads. And I noticed it in your report. And I really get concerned when we make statements like, even though the responsibilities are equal to or exceed other department heads. I feel uncomfortable pitting one department against another, one department head against another. I'd
Well, I
rather
don't believe
stay
in that
away from
either.
that. That's why I'd like to see what town to town is paying. I don't think it's fair to compare the building or the conservation person, because they do different jobs. They have different issues that they have to deal with, the different exposures and the like. Obviously, Mr. Schwartz, when he was making that public statement, his concerns with, so we wouldn't have infighting or jealousy. That's why I'd rather avoid that and more focus on,
Yeah, that's
what are
not
they
a
doing
problem.
in Swansea? What are they doing in Somerset? You know, and how does that compare? And then based on that, that's how I'll make my decision.
That's fine.
So can I just piggyback off what Selectman Hull is saying? In Somerset, which again, their agent does probably get paid more than obviously ours does, which Chairman Pires has been highlighting. But in their situation, I believe their health agent is also the conservation agent and also the stormwater agent. So they really piled on a lot of duties, but then in Somerset, and I'm only talking about Somerset, they then compensated that individual, acknowledging those expanded duties, which brings me to my question for Mr. Pilling. And I know Mr. Pilling or Mr. Pires, we've had this conversation. This is more for the people of Dayton because this conversation has come up. Can you highlight some of the duties, like the expanded duties that you'll be taking on post-COVID? And specifically, I mean things you may not have been able to get to while we were under a state of emergency.
I'm gonna try to answer that.
It's a tough question.
Well, we did continue with all the duties and responsibilities during COVID. A lot fell behind, a lot of our filing and so forth. Mr. Pilling consistently works outside his job description. And if we went by the job description, we wouldn't be saving probably $20,000 a year for plan reviews and all that. As I mentioned, I think the knowledge, and again, we're lucky to have someone with this type of knowledge. I don't think you will find well, I don't want to say won't find, but very few health agents have his skills and abilities. I don't know what else I can say.
I don't dispute any of those
His performance
points.
speaks for itself on what he can do, so.
And I guess my last point is, and I don't know what the intention is in terms of something like a contract, but I think for me personally, if I were going to support the salary increase based on the expanded duties, I would want us to at least talk about, as a board, with the employee, a contract to enshrine that and really enshrine the duties and the expectations that will come with, the increased salary, possibly the increased salary that we're discussing, the request.
Just so you know, Selectman Zagrafis, we've been trying to do that for 3 months since we talked with Finance Committee at the annual town meeting, and we haven't yet to get to that point. And now here we are with an article that has to be drawn by September 9th. We haven't sat down to negotiate anything, which I'm not gonna do here. We haven't sat down to talk about salaries or job descriptions and responsibilities. I'm happy to sit down, so is Mr. Pilling, and with town administrator and the Board of Selectmen. We wanted to actually do that. Last week, well, actually before last week, we wanted to do that in a special meeting, not necessarily executive session, but once we started talking salary, then we would be requesting executive session. So it was put off until the board said, we're gonna do this on open session. So here we are at 11th hour. And I would love to sit down and meet and talk about duties and responsibilities, salary, contracts, whatever we're gonna do. But I request just don't leave us hanging.
So I brought that up, Chairman Pires, because I would also be happy to do that. But right now, and I'm just speaking logistically, I can't call a meeting, so I just show up for the meetings when they're put
I
together.
understand.
So
I
I'm
understand.
happy to sit across the table from you and discuss this further. And I just want to point out, it sounds like Chairman Pacheco had said that there will be a placeholder. So we know that at the November 1st meeting, we're talking about some kind of a placeholder. If we want, and we are committed, and I think we're here tonight trying to get a consensus of where the board wants to go on this, but if it is the consensus of the board that this is the direction we want to take, we do have 2-3 months, or at least 2.5 months, to possibly negotiate a contract, change the job description, et cetera. And I think if that's the will of us, if that's the will of the board, we can get it done together.
Yeah, we can get a placeholder in by the 9th, and then we can go from there. I understand the special town meeting is in November, is that correct?
November 1st, and when does
November 1st.
and what are the dates for the actual warrants have to be written so the public can see what the warrants are? Do we know what that date is? Right now, we're putting a placeholder, but
September 18th?
I think it's the 8th
Right at the end of
October,
September, I believe. It was at the end, I believe once the town meeting warrant closes on the 9th, the Board of Selectmen, the meeting on the 15th will consider what articles, what special town meeting articles will go on the warrant. I believe we have to the end of the month, before it goes to the printer. So we have a little bit of time. However, from the point of negotiating a contract that we don't yet have the funding approved for, in my view, we didn't want to be presumptuous either. So one of the things that, just my opinion, I wanted and I hope that we actually start tonight is having a conversation about what the scope and what the duties of the health agent were. So then we, based on the scope, we have a scope in which really we could have a discussion about wages. Really, I mean, as my opinion, like Mr. Pius had mentioned, in terms of the hours that are funded now, in terms of the 28 hours, I believe of that 28 hours, 3 are dedicated per stormwater per week, and the other 25 are dedicated for all the other broad, all jobs and responsibilities of health agent. Based on, I think, what all of us know who are working the day-to-day and responding is, those current hours aren't enough, in my opinion, to deal with what actually, it has to be, essentially to deal with the scope that the health agent has currently. And I think that was a lot of the impetus, for the, in my opinion, the conversation that started in the spring. In the spring, we also had COVID that was also in full swing at the time. We had the ability, based on the use and the fact that contact tracing was happening during that same time, we had the ability to charge against our CARES Act allotment for any additional funds. The state of emergency, as we know, ended in the Commonwealth on June 15th, but we have since, in the last few days and last week, hearing that the state is again having issues with the timeliness of contact tracing. So it raises a question, well, if the state isn't handling it, we, at the end of the day, through the Maven reporting system, have the responsibility to track what's happening here in our own community. In any other normal time period, that responsibility is actually done and handled by a public health nurse. However, with a significant uptick in cases, again, that we're facing, we're having an issue there. One of the things I want to actually check on is whether we can bill against that CARES Act allotment for that again. It represents a need that we, I believe, are legally required to perform if the state is not actually doing it. But the fact of the matter is, we and the health agent and the Board of Health, in terms of all our departments, the role of the Board of Health and the health agent is probably the most broad. In where we are funding it in terms of the hours that, as compared to the scope of work and the need of work that is out there, we continue to have a challenge with.
Well, I just wanted to clarify.
Excuse me,
So-
Dr. Z. Excuse me. So, I noticed and it's probably not fair to you, Selectman Hull, since you don't have it before you, but I've seen all the different wages of different towns, but I noticed that Berkeley wasn't there. What's the situation with Berkeley?
Berkeley doesn't have a health agent. Per diem. Oh, per diem.
Per
Okay.
diem? And the other thing, I'm leaning more towards increasing the hours, and then perhaps between now and the annual town meeting, a contract and duties and all that kind of thing could be done, so that we have something to present to the public at the annual town meeting. We gave everybody, with the exception of the conservation agent, a 2% raise, and I would like to stick with that, but I do think at this point anyway, I don't want to vote tonight, of perhaps increasing the hours, because there's no doubt that he's busy at what he's doing, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, Mike, that this is we had this discussion today at a earlier meeting. And it was brought up the fact that there is a possibility that we should explore about Mr. Pilling, if he's receptive to this, doing some engineering for the town of Dayton, because we're losing out on grants because of the timeliness of the submission of an engineer's plan. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on that, or, if we want to discuss that at all at this point.
So yes, thank you. That's one of the things as we discuss the scope and the function of the role and of the current health agent jobs and responsibilities. What, as we know, Mr. Pilling has brought to the table, as Mr. Pius had mentioned, we actually realize a cost savings. Yes, there has been COVID for the last year and a half. And yes, there has been some plan review. Undoubtedly, that could have been a little held up. However, the fact of the matter is we haven't had to pay an outside consultant for that, and we haven't had to rely on the timelines of an outside consultant that we have no way of controlling, who have also been extremely busy in the same time period. So the fact that we've been able, and Todd has been able to help us really do that as part of his day-to-day job and his function, has made us more efficient as a town. It's had a cost savings for a town, and it's also had the cost savings for residents as well. And the question is, we have a lot of accessibility work happening right now, where we just actually, in terms of the accessibility work, and the drawings and engineering happening at the library, as an example, we are paying a PE about $14,000 to come up with plans for that. And that's only on the library. And the question was if we could talk about or consider, how Mr. Pilling might be able to help perform those type of roles. It would be an increased responsibility for him, but it would mean more cost savings for the town. And those are the things I think, frankly, it's healthy to talk about when we're talking about function and the duties and all the needs and all the responsibilities we have now, but into the future as well.
Dr. Z, you wanted to say something before?
I think I want us to be very focused in this conversation. We have two issues that we're talking about, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing up one of them. We have an increase in hours and/or an increase in the hourly rate. And I think the original request was for both. And I just want to remind the board that in the past years, there have been years where we didn't give anyone an increase in terms of our employees, except if they had an increase in duties or an expansion in their duties. So I just wanted to remind the board of that as well. And it does look like Mr. Pilling has had an expansion of duties. So I just want us to be mindful of obviously what's possible in terms of monies and taxpayer monies, but also what the prior decisions and the logic that the board has used in years prior when we have in fact granted salary increases when there was an increase and duties.
So, Todd, we had increased, I believe it was last December, we had increased the hours because of the tracing and everything else. And I think some weeks you're working at least 40 hours, if not more. But right now, are you down to back to 28 hours? And the CARES Act covers some of that, if I remember.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, while I get the microphone, I just want to say thank you to our town clerk. He's doing a phenomenal job from what we're seeing in the Board of Health office, and I appreciate all his help with what we do. Yeah, so as of, was it June 15th, it was over and I'm back down to the 28 hours. And for a peak there, when we were doing about 50 new cases a week, I was doing about 56 hours a week.
Yeah.
I ended up putting in about 700 hours of additional time and overtime through the COVID pandemic.
Does the board have any other questions?
I have no further questions.
So we'll discuss this again.
So yeah, like if I can make a recommendation, just actually so we keep the conversation with the framework actually going, we have, like as we discussed, we have a deadline of September 9th to get the draft special town meeting warrant articles or the proposed special town meeting warrant articles in. And as a result of the conversation and in light of the conversation we're having this evening, if I could ask or recommend of the Board of Health that they take everything that we've discussed in this conversation and then go back and have a conversation as the Board of Health and propose something as a starting point that could work for the Board of Health so that when we come back on the 15th, we have a draft special town meeting warrant article that meets the warrant process, but we also have a continued starting point of which we could base a further conversation and deliberation on, if that could work.
Works with me. Does it work for the?
Yeah, like I say, we're open to discussions. It's just like to say the timing of things to make
Yeah.
sure everything happens, so.
So this should be on the agenda for the September 15th meeting.
Yes.
We may have some answers or
Yeah.
something by then. Selectman Hull?
When are the articles due in?
September 9th,
September 9th.
yes,
And we're meeting September 15th.
yes.
So how is that going to work?
So it would work by the Board of Health. There would be a proposal coming, a written proposal in terms of any cost that reflects the functions that was actually talking about tonight for the Board of Selectmen to consider together with the Board of Health on the meeting on the 15th.
Mr. Chairman,
Selectman Hull?
I heard Mr. Pires use the word negotiate. They sitting down and putting a proposal together, and then coming the 15th, either we're going to be here a very, very long time negotiating, or we probably need some meetings in between them. Because I'm sure we're going to, if it's a negotiation, there's a back and forth. And I don't think it would be fair, especially to the Board of Health, because I'm not going to be rushed into making a decision without, one, some give and take, but also comparison. So I don't think it'd be fair to the Board of Health. They come in with a proposal on the 15th, and we say, no, we're not good with that.
We've wasted time. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we negotiated some other contracts, we didn't do it one night. So I like the idea of going back and putting together some, either a subcommittee, or negotiating with the town administrator during that period. So when we come in the 15th, we kind of are very close to a decision.
Mr. Pires?
I just wanted to say I am open to a meeting between the parties any day of the week, morning, afternoon, or night. I am not open to discussing salaries and so forth at an open meeting. It should be, it doesn't have to be executive session, it can be a session with us. If you would authorize the town administrator to negotiate with us, actually with Todd, because I really don't want to be part of negotiations. It's his life, his salary, his contract, if we go with the contract. But, you know, that would probably save some time, and in our meeting, we can hold a special meeting in the interim also, to talk about where we're headed with this and get the wishes of the Board of Health. But to continually put it off is not productive for anybody. So I would ask that you give the town administrator the authority to move forward with discussions.
So if I could, Mr. Chair, we're talking actually about two separate things in two separate processes. We're talking about contract negotiations, and we're talking about meeting the deadlines that we have with the special town meeting warrant. And I don't have any problem doing anything that's been discussed. I just want to understand, is it the hope of everyone involved to have a contract, in place that will be funded through a special town meeting warrant article? Or is it the direction that we want to have these, that the funding in place before a contract is negotiated?
The former. We always do the former.
So then if it's not funded, we need to go back?
Correct.
Okay. That's my question.
I wasn't answering for the board's wish. I was only answering what we have been doing.
Okay.
I will say this, though. I agree that we should move the ball forward. My understanding is the Board of Health knows exactly what the request is. They know exactly the justification. They know exactly what the hours will be, what the increase in the rate of pay request is. So I wouldn't see I wouldn't want us to go to the 15th to be the first time that we discussed it when they already know the specifics. So I think we should move the ball forward.
No, that's
The only wrench that I could possibly see in moving forward in preparation and creating a budget is if, through discussions, we do consider and approve, if he's willing, for Agent Pilling to do some engineering for the town, in which case would be a substantial salary increase for those duties. So I think we get the ball rolling, as Mr. DeGraffis said, and then we see what happens with it. And try to get this over with ASAP.
Well, I would like to have several options available to us on September 15th, different possibilities. I think it's kind of quick to negotiate a contract with all the additional duties that we may be given to Mr. Pillings before, by the time the warrants are supposed to be ready, so I'm having a little difficulty with that. I am willing to consider increasing hours, as I've stated before, and I would be interested in listening to different options, but I'm not sure I'm going to be prepared to vote on the other options before the special town meeting.
That's fine. Because we all know what an engineer gets an hour, I believe, so.
Yeah, I would like to see exactly what his responsibilities are going to be whenever we have an engineering job and how that impacts
This
his
is why
duties.
I'm sorry. Discussion with the town administrator probably is the best move forward for now. And we'll go from there. Yes.
Can I say a couple? So, yeah, first off, I want to say I can't do the job I do at the craziness and the speed and everything else without a good office manager, without a good board behind me. The board members, I know Tom spoke on what he did, but the other board members, when we go to write regulations, they'll step in. They've stepped in to do housing inspections, food inspections, et cetera, and they filled in where needed. They're always there behind me anytime I need support. But that's part of the reason why we're here tonight, is a matter of where does the selectman want to see the Board of Health? What do you want to meet? You've got a list of all the duties that are in my job, description, and all the ones that I'm already doing that are not in my job description, and you asked about expansion of programs. Well, I'm sitting here, I've already come up with 6 things that we're already looking to do above and beyond what I'm already doing now, which is already...
Please, excuse me, could we please shut off the cell phones, please? Or lower the volume?
Which is already far beyond. Oh.
Yes, I hear you, thank you.
So
I
it's
was
been...
smiling, you can't see it, but I was smiling.
This is like 4 years for me, like today, that I've been here. We've come a long way in 4 years. I think the Board of Health has a long way to go and a lot more expansion to be done. But I think if we can establish what the board wants to see me doing, then I can tell you how much money I think it's worth. Because right now you say, oh, you're worth this, and then, by the way, here's 12 more things to do. Like you say, now you get bogged down in the contract. And I know there's also a discussion whether it should be a contract or an employee agreement or whatever it is, because a contract is obviously a different animal, so.
Selectman Hull?
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to make a motion that we authorize Town Administrator Mike Mullen to sit down with Mr. Pillen to work out an agreement for a vote at the next meeting as to the direction we're going to go on this. Obviously, we need a dollar value. I think by doing it that way, they can sit down and talk, and if Mr. Mullen needs input from each of the individual Board of Selectmen, he can reach out to us through emails.
Is there a second?
So I would prefer, I think it should be the town administrator, but I think we've been more successful in terms of less volleyball back and forth when there has been a member of the board also there. So I would prefer if it's the town administrator and one member of the board.
So is that a second?
Well,
If,
it could be an amendment to the motion.
if Selectman Hull is okay with it, yes, I will second it with my amendment.
I just don't think, we're asking to have a contract to vote on in 4 weeks. And it impacts the Board of Health, it impacts the town, and it impacts taxes and everything else. And I don't think I'm going to be prepared to vote on a contract at that time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I ask you a question? So I totally
Is that the
respect-
question you want to ask?
No, I have 2 questions. My second most important question is, I understand and respect your opinion that you don't feel you would be ready to vote on a contract. So can I ask you, if the actual contract is not ready by September 15th, and mind you, we have probably another month after that we could finalize it, would you at least settle for a revised job description for the health agent that includes the expanded duties we've all been alluding to tonight?
Well, I would ask the town administrator whether or not he feels you're going to be able to have something for us by September 15th.
So we need to have, whether it's a contract or an updated job description, we need to have something, in my opinion, that is going to inform how we go forward with a special town meeting proposal that we have to have submitted, and the Board of Health has to have submitted by the 9th. So, I mean, I think it would be reasonable to, even if we don't have the final perimeters of a contract all nailed down, that by the 9th, we're gonna have the framework of a proposed contract, because those ideally are gonna be the aspects that form the request of a special town meeting warrant article. So I think having information as I just mentioned in that outline, whether it's a contract framework, if I could, I agree with you, I think, I forget who said it, but having all the particulars of a contract all nailed down by the 15th Like, I think we might be rushing things potentially. However, by the 9th, in order to submit a special town meeting warrant, we're gonna have to have a framework, a framework proposal ready, so we can have that ready, and the costs, any costs that will be associated with that framework will then go forward, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. And I only brought up the job description, Mr. Administrator, because the job description already exists. It's not a document that we need to create from scratch. It's just something we simply need to add to.
Understood.
So do you want to withdraw your
No, I don't.
motion? You want to keep your second?
Mrs. Brady, can you just read the language? Is it about the contract specifically, or is it just say like agreement?
It said agreement.
I'm fine if it's an agreement, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to box you in on the contract, or us.
Right.
So is the suggestion that we have a tentative agreement to vote on that night that may require further discussion that night before we finalize it? Is that the understanding?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Pius?
Yes, Selectman Zagrafis, we're in the middle of the motion here. I'm not sure where we stand with the motion. But he did suggest a member of the Board of Selectmen participate with the town administrator in any negotiations. I would respectfully request that myself or another member of the Board of Health also be present. So there's 2 from your side of the house and 2 from our side of the house.
We're all-
Although technically I'm part of management,
We're all
since
the same house.
I think it would be cleaner that way.
Do you still?
Well, I got a sense, and I may be incorrect, and I know Mr. Segoffis is going on vacation, that I want to see this issue resolved, so it does go forth at town meeting in a logical way, so that the voters are not confused. And I don't know, Mr. Pacheco, your schedule, but I'd be willing to serve on it if your schedules conflict. So, you know, I know Brett is going away on vacation. I don't know what your schedule is. Obviously, you're the chairman. If you want to do it, that's fine, but I would have no problem
Yeah,
serving on it.
and I know that you work, so I think I would like to be part of that. But I'm, on the motion, I'm going to let former Selectman Goulart speak, only because she's the chairman of, I believe you're the chairman of the Stormwater. So I'm going to let her speak on it. I don't normally allow public input on,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
other than public input time.
I sat in on the meeting this morning. The only thing you need for the 9th of September is a ballpark number. That can be done. Negotiations don't have to be finalized. You don't need a job description that's all approved and all of that. The main thing is we need the number, just like any town meeting, because you know, when the discussion takes place, sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down. It also can be amended on town meeting floor, so that if, when negotiations are settled, the amount of money in that warrant article is more than you need, then it gets reduced. So all of that work doesn't have to be done. The main thing is you must talk to the appropriate people and come up with a number. This is roughly what we're talking about for your job and your hours and all of this other stuff. And if Mr. Pilling has other duties that he wants to throw in the mix, fine. But it's got to be understood that that number is the max that's going to be on the warrant, period. So that's going to meet the deadlines you need. As I said, I was at the meeting today. The other reason I wanted to speak is because I am chairman of the Stormwater Committee. I rely heavily on him. We could not have done what we did in Taunton with Dora Estates without him. I would also like, and this may have already been discussed when I was outside the building, I would also like to get away with so many hours for stormwater and so many for the Board of Health, simply because it's up to him to prioritize the workload. And as we know, when we were dealing with that situation with the Taunton Conservation Commission, drop everything and do this, and he did it. Because I was teasing him, I don't want to hear 3 hours. You have got to do this because you're the only person qualified to do it. And we all know that going in, He was educating quite a few people over those 3 meetings between his written documentation and the backup and everything else that was done. So from a strictly stormwater perspective, discussion of his duties, I'm not that much into his rate of pay. That can be worked out. I'm looking for, if you will, an overall job description that does not limit him. He's got to manage his tasks and his hours based on the needs. And if we have another episode like we just dealt with, whether it's Taunton or another community, and he has to drop everything Board of Health, he's going to have to drop it because he is an engineer, and he's not the town engineer. But when you need those kind of qualifications to make your case, he's the person that we've got on board. So I just ask that in conversations relative to his duties, I know what's going on, I'm willing to attend meetings, I want to be able to have input on his duties because I want to make sure that the Stormwater Committee and its needs are recognized. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Gwilett, so you're saying that when we have this sit down and discuss his job description, you want to be part of that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would. I would. As I said, as far as money goes, that's negotiations. That can be worked out. I'm not going to get involved in that. I am looking for assurance that the kind of professional duties that he performed in the past, if we ever need him, and I'm sure we will, are going to be part of that. If, even without the case in Taunton, I'll describe it as that, he has to look at every stormwater plan that comes in here. And he working with at least 2 other members on the committee, and sometimes the fire chief or the police chief, whoever we bring in. His expertise and their combined expertise, they're the ones that tell me we can move ahead with this project. We've covered all of the issues. Everything that's needed is here. And so we go forward. I can't read those plans. I could look at it and see if there's a structure or some trees or some wetlands. But as far as what you need to know to say, this part of the plan is good, this isn't going to work, as we saw with the Taunton case. So that's the kind of things I want to ensure that are going to be in this.
No, I think you should be part of the conversation.
Thank
Any
you.
further discussion? Selectman Hull?
No, I'd like to at this time move the motion. Do we have a motion on the floor?
Roll call. How do you vote? Selectman
Aye.
Hull? Dr. Z, how do you vote?
Before we vote, I don't think the motion included a Board of Health member or a Stormwater member, so do we all agree that it should?
I wasn't sure if you were that specific in the,
No, I wasn't.
I don't think it's mentioned in the motion as to who will actually participate in this.
Okay.
I think the town administrator, if he needs additional expertise in helping in his negotiations, should be allowed to do that, whether it be a lawyer or Mrs. Goulart.
I agree. Okay. Aye.
And Campuchico is an aye. So thank you. We'll be meeting shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While I'm here, I know COVID's not on the agenda, but I know now you guys aren't meeting for another month. I don't know if you want an update from the last 3 days or whatever, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I was
or you
good.
want to wait till public input, whatever you want to do, but.
Well, actually, that's what I'm going to, but I do have the numbers, and obviously they've increased, but if you want to speak on those numbers, that's fine too.
Well, I'll be very brief. So when I ran my numbers on Monday for the weekly report, we had 7 cases and 7 cases. Since I ran the report Monday, we've had 14 cases, and that was as of about an hour ago when I ran them. So obviously they're still on the uptick, but you're seeing the chatter on the news and everything else. So the numbers still are on the way up. We heard from in a conference call on Tuesday that the Department of Public Health, they figure it's going to be a couple weeks before they have their contact tracers trained, and so they can take cases back from us that they gave back to us. So right now there's a couple dozen people out there that nobody's tracing. So.
Selectman Hull?
I had a discussion with Mr. Pilling before this meeting, and I have a concern. We're a long way for our next meeting. Our numbers are going up. I'm concerned, even though the system has been suspended of green, yellow, and red. The science is there. It was a guideline. It is the best science and the best guidelines that we have thus far. And for the safety and well-being of the people in the town of Dayton, I would like to see if CARE funds are available, that one, Mr. Pilling, through overtime, through the CARES Act, as he did prior to the ending of the system, be allowed to restart contact tracing, should we enter the criteria that originally met the red. Secondly, and I'm not quite sure who we authorize to make this happen, whether it be Mr. Pacheco, Mr. Mullen, there's a task force, I understand, or the Board of Health themselves, to authorize Mr. Pilling to implement the same standards that we used before when the town of Dayton was in the red. This is discussion at this point.
I just want to throw out that the red standard before was 25 cases in the previous 2 weeks. That was what the standard was. So, just so you know the number.
Okay.
So.
Mr. Pilling, we're at what, 7 a week right now? So about half that?
No,
Well, if you go, last week was 7, and this week we're at 14 already. We're at 21.
Oh.
And it's Wednesday, so
Okay.
we have till Sunday but the state does the numbers on Sunday, but they don't release them until Thursday because there's always that lag of getting cases reported. So
We don't meet again until the 15th, so that's why.
well, when is the task force going to meet again?
The task, the 8th, I believe, Todd, is that correct, with prime time?
yeah, but we don't have another meeting, and we could always schedule one.
Oh, yeah, like, we're watching this, all of us collectively, members of the task force, are watching this, following it on a regular basis. Like, and when we called the meeting, I believe on August 5th, it was an impromptu one based, like, on the need. So, like, we don't, so my point is, just because we don't actually have a scheduled meeting right here tonight, it doesn't prevent us, if we needed to have a meeting Monday, then we would meet as part of our due diligence.
Where we don't meet, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Selectman Hull.
As a point of information, for Mr. Pilling alone to take on this task would take away too many of his other duties. I insist, that I agree that it needs to be done. However, Mrs. Grassi, just for your information, has also been trained in contact tracing, so.
But Ty, you had indicated that the state's going to be taking this over in a couple of weeks, or?
Well, so the way it always worked was that the duty was upon each town to do their own contact tracing. The problem is that the towns didn't have enough staff to deal with it, and so the state created the CTC, the Contact Tracing Collaborative, where you could send any cases that you couldn't handle to them. Sometimes it would be one at a daycare or somebody that was on a plane and you had to deal with the airlines and whatever, and you could send cases to them. What happened is when the cases went down, they got rid of all of those people. So it's going to be a couple weeks before they're up and ready to handle these additional cases. Right now, like I say, our nurse can't handle the cases, and I'm willing to offer that we step in at least until the CTC can get there to fill the gap, because I don't want our nurse to leave over something as silly as trying to keep up with 12 cases a day kind of thing when she can't, so.
Selectman Hull?
I just want to clarify my point. What I'm asking for is two things. One, that we use the criteria we used before to declare we've entered the red zone. And two, authorizing someone, the authority, to direct Mr. Pilling to do what he's got to do his job. And if that means bringing in the office manager or his nurse to help him to do that contact tracing, so be it. The only drawback, and only Mr. Mullen, I believe, knows is how much money is available for overtime. This is overtime. This isn't
For your budget.
taking away from his regular
Well, that was
day
what we
job.
ran into last time, was the straight pay and the overtime pay. So CARES Act is good, money is good through to the end of this year, December 31st, 2021. I believe there's still hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in the Dayton account.
So we got,
But what happened was last year is they only pay premium pay. So it's only above your regular hours. So it's only the time and a half. But because I'm only at 28 hours, from 28 to 35, I get paid straight pay. So the CARES Act didn't pay for it, and the town of Dayton had to pay for it. But it burned me out. It was a lot of stress. I am not doing it again for straight pay. And I only want to do it until we've reached a point where the CTC or the nurse can handle it again. I don't want to do this for another 6 months. I can't.
I understand that, but,
So.
okay. I wasn't.
Can I
aware.
ask a question about the town nurse?
Yes.
So, Pod, I totally, Mr. Pilling, I totally agree. It was a bit of a nightmare because, you know, we found out that from 28 to 35, we were on the hook for, and anything after 35, you know, was still a bit of a bureaucratic nightmare to submit the reimbursements and everything. So I totally agree with that. But why would the town nurse be unable to assist in any contact tracing if it were an emergency? Like, what would they be doing that would be more important than that?
So right now she works full-time. She has a full-time job. She has 3 towns that she supports part-time. And in a normal year, before COVID started, she would do 2 to 3 hours a month in taking cases for tick-borne viruses, tuberculosis, that kind of stuff. Obviously, I don't have any knowledge to deal with that stuff, so that's what the nurse was for. When we got to the contact tracing, and she's doing the one town that she had with 40 cases a week, and then you throw in 40 cases a week in this town and that town and that town, that's 120 cases in a week. You don't have the hours to do it, and that's why she had to pull back. She just doesn't, same as me, I can't do it in my regular hours and do my regular job. Something's got to give. So we were the safety net for our nurse to get through. And then once it got through, then she picked it back up again, and she's been doing it for a couple months now. Before it's all of a sudden the last few weeks is when the numbers ticked up. So does that answer your question, Dr. Z?
Thank you.
So if we don't take any action, I guess, then there's no contact tracing until the state. And when do we anticipate that?
They told us on Tuesday they figured it would be about 2 weeks to 3 weeks before they would have like enough people there to do it. They said as of on Tuesday afternoon they had 7,000 people in the state that nobody's called. So, and what they're doing is they're texting people now and asking them to call. They're doing it a little bit differently now,
Yeah.
but
Selectman Hull?
Does the Board of Health need the Board of Selectmen's approval to implement any other aspects of, if we call it, we go into the red? Or can they just do it on their own?
well, what's going to happen when we start getting there is the pandemic task force will make recommendations to the selectmen
But
about
we're
building.
not meeting until the 15th.
Right, no, I know, for building closures and all the rest of it. So, obviously, if the selectmen wanted to authorize the pandemic task force to carry on until the 15th, until the selectmen are back to make any of those decisions for face masks in town hall, or closing town hall to the public, closing playgrounds, whatever you want. So,
Well,
that's.
I think we ought to do it the way we did it before. We'll have our regular schedule. In the event that something changes, we get into so-called red zone, I'll have to call a meeting,
Special meeting.
and we will,
I'm okay with that.
we will get together and we'll have to make a decision. We're not quite at that point yet. We're pretty close, quite frankly. I'd be interested in hearing before we even have that meeting what the pandemic task force recommendation is before I call a meeting. I don't want it just to be, we're not public health, so.
No,
would
no,
like-
I
I would
totally
like some
agree.
input from those people. Town administrator?
So if I could, Mr. Chair, I do understand, and I agree with the chairman of the Board of Health and Mr. Hull, like, and Mr. Pilling, that, like, the fact that we have this gap in contact tracing, right? Happening in contact tracing is very concerning right now. Last week we had, like a phone call, like, with Manic Community Health Center from Taunton, and they indicated, and we were just actually talking and discussed our frustration with the CTC about the timelines, and they, actually the CEO of Manic, actually recommended to us that we reach out directly to DPH, and convey and convey our concerns really to DPH. I think based on what we know now, I think that's warranted, especially. The other thing I have done is and been working on, I'm actually to no avail right now, but the state has also been funding regional public health nurse consortiums, at a pretty good clip, as long as there's communities who are interested in working together. And I have reached out to a few local communities. One who employs actually the public health nurse that we have now. And that community really didn't seem too interested. But as a result of the information that we learned earlier this week, there's also another community which our public health nurse also works for, and I did reach out to actually their town administrator yesterday morning, and I've been playing telephone. I was playing telephone tag with him, and I did ask him how their community was dealing with this issue as well. So I'm trying to get a more actually regional view of how this issue is impacting us as a region as well. But I do think based on what we know now, a phone call and email to DPH about this tomorrow, as well as to the Executive Office of Administration and Finance, asking and requesting about going back to utilizing our CARES Act funding is imperative at this point. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Just one more quick thing. At the last meeting, Mr. Hull had asked about some of the numbers and questioned how some of them work with Dayton. So for those at home who are wondering what that was about, so if you have a business in town or a group home or something like that where you have employees that work there, right? The employer may test their employees regularly. And when you get to work, they may test you there, and the testing kit has their name on it. And so those employees get reported with the work address, and then they come to us. Well, we got P.O. boxes, we got whatever. We had places at these group homes, and we went to them and said, hey, and found out the person lived in another town. We then, in the system, we changed them to that other town. We call the other town and say they're coming your way. But we did talk to these places to make sure that they weren't reporting their address, they were reporting the employee address for the future. So that was way back in October or November when we corrected that, but the numbers all got shifted to where they needed to be.
Thank
So,
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was my concern also. You had mentioned that to me. Also, your concern about the group homes being counted a little differently. But that would have been picked up when you did your contact tracing, I would have thought. Right. So I thought that you would fix it. Any other questions? Did we take a vote already on this, on the motion to that town administrator deal with?
I don't think you got a second.
I thought,
I didn't think it was a motion.
No,
there's no motion?
did Brett second it?
No.
No, so I think it'll die for lack of a second.
Thank you.
If it's any consolation, I do understand what our charge is and what we need to be doing, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
So, public input. So before I start public input, I saw 4 letters that came in yesterday. I did not see them Monday before we came up with the agenda. So they weren't able to be put on the agenda, but I would,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a point of order, is it possible to take the Aggie School item next so that Mr. Raymond can leave? Because it's not gonna take.
No, don't worry. Don't worry about me.
All right,
Yeah,
okay.
don't worry about me.
that's a little ways down the,
Yeah, it is.
let me finish up with public input and the announcements. So this office received emails that I only saw yesterday, so I would like an opportunity to read those letters. They weren't able to be included in the packet because I only saw it yesterday. Our agenda was set up by Monday. So the first one is from Tom Galucci. Good afternoon. I'm writing in regard to the abusive language used by Selectman Pacheco towards one of our fellow constituents, Mr. Robert Woods of North Dayton, during the August 11, 2021 Selectmen's meeting. During public input near the end of the meeting, Mr. Woods was trying to ensure that Selectman Pacheco's exact anti-flag comments from the June 16 Selectmen's meeting made it into the public record verbatim. Mr. Woods quoted Selectman Pacheco. At that point, Selectman Pacheco lost control of his temper and began a tirade directed at Mr. Woods, beginning with the phrase, You are too stupid to understand what I'm saying. Delivered with anger and shouting. This is a clear violation of the Code of Conduct which Selectman Pacheco signed in 2020. I am asking for a disciplinary action to be taken, a public and personal apology from Mr. Pacheco to the people of Dayton and Mr. Woods in particular, and the resignation of Mr. Pacheco as he demonstrated himself to be temperamentally unfit for the position he now holds. Thank you, Tom Galucci. The second letter is from Robert Woods. Dear, good day, Karen. After the way Chairman Ken Pacheco talked to me at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, I'm asking for a public apology, and going forward, I expect him to never talk to any resident in the town of Dayton the way he talked to me. Name calling is not the way to conduct yourself in a public meeting, especially from the chairman of our highest office. The third letter is from Bill Mello. I attended the August 11th Board of Selectmen's meeting. Just after I left the meeting, I heard yelling through the door of the old town hall behind me. When I opened the door, I heard Ken Pacheco yelling and call one of the members of the audience stupid. Upon reviewing the video of the meeting on YouTube, I am appalled to find that Ken Pacheco was hurling this insult at Robert Woods. Mr. Wood is a highly respected resident of the town and notably a war veteran. To make matters even worse than that, the argument was a result of Ken Pacheco solidifying his position in regard to disparaging remarks that he made about the American flag at a previous Board of Selectmen's meeting. Mr. Pacheco claimed that the American flag was created only for whites, Protestants, and landowners, and that it did not represent all people. And he was using this as an argument for flying the LGBTQ flag at Town Hall. He refuses to acknowledge his statements even though there is video and audio evidence of what he said. Ken Pacheco's behavior is a violation of the Town of Dayton's Code of Conduct, Policy Number 12, which states to treat co-workers and members of the public with courtesy and respect at all times. Ken Pacheco signed this Code of Conduct on July 8, 2020, but apparently was not sincere about that signature. Elected officials cannot be allowed to abuse residents of the town or attendees at town meetings. This goes double for long-respected members of the community who are trying to defend the American flag from disparaging remarks made by a selectman. I insist that Ken Pacheco apologize for yelling and insulting Mr. Woods and also apologize for what he said about the American flag. Mr. Pacheco's behavior, if it goes unchecked, will discourage the public from participating in town government. If we let this behavior stand, it sends the message to residents that it's okay for elected officials to yell at meeting attendees if the official disagrees with them. Please see that the town sets this right. That was from Bill Mello. And the last one that I saw is from Donna McClay. Hi, Karen. After reviewing the above-mentioned town video, I was appalled at Mr. Pacheco's behavior towards the private citizens. I have worked as an addiction nurse for over 10 years. I have been verbally abused, called horrible names and swears. I never once lost my temper or treated them with disrespect regardless of their behavior towards me. Mr. Pacheco unfortunately does not have the temperament to be in public position. He needs to apologize for his inappropriate behavior. Thank you, Donna McClay. Birdies. So I did lose control. I do want to apologize to Robert Woods for me calling him stupid. It was inappropriate, it was unprofessional of me. However, what I think the residents in town also need an apology. He interrupted the meeting 4 times, and the 4th time he interrupted, he stated, I know you're going to call me out of order. Other people were speaking, and he knows, as an elected official, he knows that you can't interrupt other people speaking. And I also would like an apology for the threat that you made to me, to meet you out in the parking lot. So I do feel that I lost my temper, and it was clearly inappropriate for me to call you stupid. That's my apology. Mr. Woods, you want to say anything else, or does anybody else for public input?
Robert Woods, 158 Chase Street. I accept your apology, and I apologize for calling you out in the parking lot. I'm a man of honor, and I don't hold a grudge. If I held a grudge, there'd be quite a few people in this room I wouldn't talk to this day.
I know.
Okay? So I do not hold a grudge. And I accept your apology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Anybody else? Mr. Hull, would you read the announcements, please?
Certainly.
Wait, is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to speak? I can't see the names.
Not advising, Mr. Chairman.
Would you read the announcement,
Certainly.
please?
Town of Dayton public buildings are open to the public. The library is closed to the public but continues to offer curbside service. The Town of Dayton Food Bank distribution will be held next on August 21st, 2021, located at the Town Hall, 979 Somerset Avenue, and that'll be at the lower level. The Dayton Lions Club Cow Chip Contest will be held on Saturday, August 21st at 2 p.m. at the Carl K. Spratt Memorial Field, 979 Somerset Avenue. Tickets can be purchased at Irujo Farms, 1522 Williams Street through August 19th. They'll also be selling tickets for the chicken barbecue. The Dayton Permanent Firefighters announced the 21st Annual Muscular Dystrophy Association Fill the Boot Drive, which will be held on both September 3rd and 4th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the intersection of Somerset Avenue and Center Street. The Dayton Historical Society is holding a Walk in the Cemetery event with the Gravestone Girls at the Dayton Unitarian Cemetery, 2036 Elm Street on Thursday, September 9th at 6 p.m. Learn about gravestone art, symbolic meaning, cemetery evolution, and more. A reminder, please license your dog. It is the law. Leash your dogs for everyone's safety. All dogs 6 months of age or older must be licensed yearly, beginning January 1st. All dogs must be restrained by a leash or chain when on any street or public place in town. If you have any question, call the clerk's office at 608-669-5411, option 2. The Cable Commission is in need of members. If you are interested, please call 508-669-6431, extension 100, for more information.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to go to agenda item number 10 on the new business D.
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll step down and second that motion. Your vote?
Aye.
Campuchico is an aye. Selectman Dr. Z? It passes.
Thank you.
So there's a request to use the field behind us. Have you had an opportunity, Selectman Hull, to look at the request?
Absolutely. I'm ready to make a motion at this time.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that the Bristol County Agricultural School, that we approve the facility use request.
I'll step down and second that motion. Any discussion? This has been done in the past, so this is not something new for the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
And how do you vote, Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Campuchico is an aye. Dr. Z?
Aye.
Aye. It's been approved.
Thank you.
I need to sign off it at some point, I think, but it's been approved. Let's go back to the Town Administrator's report.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few updates, but most importantly, following up on what the Chairman of the Board of Health had mentioned earlier relating to the West Nile virus. Yesterday morning, the Board of Health received a call, notification from the Department of Public Health that the West Nile virus has been found here in Dayton. And we did get information out to the residents that was conveyed actually to us directly from the Board of Health. But on our homepage, we did outline the precautions and asked actually all of our Dayton residents to take precautions in light of us actually being notified, us being notified that we had the West Nile virus that was identified here in town. I am going to put a call in also to the Department of Public Health. I do want to ask them about any spraying and the timeline for spraying that actually typically occurs every year, just so we all know and understand that. And when I do like actually hear and get that information, I am, like I will convey that
Share it with us.
and I will convey that to everybody. But I do want to thank the Board of Health for notifying us and all the residents of the town right away. And it's something that we'll continue to keep on top of and notify with any additional information updates.
Thank you.
I do also want to update the board that a lot of work on the Briggs Street culvert has been happening this week. The culvert, so the new culvert itself, actually came into town yesterday, with oversized loads trucks. It was installed today. And tomorrow, I believe they're gonna finishing up actually leveling out both sides of it on Briggs Street. Actually leading up to it, one of the things that did actually have to occur was power to 3 properties on Briggs Street did actually need to come offline, and the contractor worked with National Grid. I got those properties up on generator for about a day and a half or so. But I want to thank Mr. Ferry. He's been keeping right on everything. I've been working with him, and the project seems to be going very smoothly. And additionally, finally, our work continues relating to getting the modular trailer here for the Dayton Public Library. I've been in touch with the modular trailer company, as has Mr. Aguirre. I talked with our representative actually at 7:30 this morning with him. I wanted to follow up and get a timeline. They are having issues that, and the company Aries from New Hampshire has been having issues with the transportation company and getting the modular company here. I did outline and convey to him that this was our highest issue of priority, that we needed to have it here. He understood it, and I'll be following up, and Jim will be following up every day until it's here. Your question?
Selectman Hull?
In your negotiations with them, and this is really important,
Yep.
are there any penalties if they don't meet their timeline?
I believe under the contract, it said initially they had 3 or 4 weeks. They had indicated it could be quicker, which I'm a big fan of expectation setting, and if it was gonna be actually a normal course of a timeline, ideally I would have liked to know about that at the outset rather than being told it could be here quicker. And if there are any issues, we'll pursue those in light of the contract.
Are there any penalties for failure to meet that deadline?
To be honest with you, I'll check into that and to understand exactly where we are in terms of that timeline. I don't recall that specifically, but I can look into that.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me just for a second. So, Selectman Hull, I also agree with you. Unfortunately, I don't believe there's any penalties. I haven't read in the contract. However, I signed a letter of intent that we purchased or leased the module before we even voted on it to get the ball rolling, so we get it here sooner, because as you know, we have a deadline.
Yes.
And I'm really disappointed in the fact that it's not sitting out there right now. The town has done all the work, the prep work to get it ready, but we have a timeline, very serious timeline, and we're meeting on this tomorrow. We have a meeting with the library director, Jim Aggie, I believe also, I think Tom Ferry's part of it, and the library trustees, to see how quickly we can decide where the children's library is going to be, if it's going to be the lower level. Let's get moving on that. Let's not wait until we get the modular. And then we're going to talk about how we're going to move the books and everything else to the modular, so that by Labor Day, we got it going. Dr. Z, I'm not sure if you're able to hear me. Probably not, because it's,
it's
over here.
honestly a little bit hard with the mask. I'm not gonna lie. I apologize. I did get the gist of what you were saying, but I am gonna be that person that beats the dog dead here, and I just want an answer on if the vendor blows past the deadline, what recourse of action does the town of Dayton have? I think that question is important. Is there any recourse of action in a worst case scenario?
I would hope so, but I don't know that for a fact.
That concerns me, because I feel like if that's, and again, I know we don't have it in front of us, so I know we need to look into it, but I was always raised to plan for the worst case scenario, and so I would be concerned if there were no, what I'll call contingencies for a worst case scenario. I think that is really concerning. That means we don't have any cards to play.
I would ask the town administrator to look into that.
No worries, I appreciate
And
it.
hopefully we'll have a further update at tomorrow's meeting. And then, and then we can share this with the board.
Thank you.
So you can know what's going on with it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is to review, discuss, and act on the discussion of the Flag Bylaw Committee. I'm going to make a suggestion to the board, because I believe there's a petition asking to put on a warrant article regarding the flag, and I've seen the petition. I know what it's for. It's basically to keep the things the same. So my personal feeling is, I don't think we ought to form this committee yet. Let's see what happens at the special town meeting. If that warrant article prevails, it's over. And if it doesn't prevail, we then will form this committee and we'll have something ready for the residents to vote on by ballot or whatever. And we're still in the process. We haven't got an answer yet. We're still in the process to find out the mechanics of that, how to get it on the ballot. Does it have to go to a town meeting and then town residents approve to put it on the ballot, and then the residents get to vote on it in the ballot? You had your hand up.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this, because it says here, review, discuss, and act. So I'd like to make a motion that we table discussion on this.
Selectman Paul, I am gonna second this, but would you mind if I just asked a question before I do? Because there's no discussion on a table, so I won't be able to ask if I second it.
Okay.
Would you let him ask you a question for a second? Yes, you can ask the question, Dr. Z.
Thank you. I guess, so since I have no insight into what the intention is behind the petition, I felt like every party, regardless of where they fell on the issue, for or against other flags being flown or not, I felt like everyone agreed that it should go to a ballot vote because the most people could vote on it. So is the intention of the party petitioning that it will go to the special town meeting where there's a small number of people voting on it and then go to a ballot? Is that the intention?
I don't believe it is. I believe, and I'm going to let Mr. Woods if he wants to speak, but I believe it's that the town on its property can only fly the American flag, the POW, MIA flag, the state flag, the town flag, and all the all the armed forces flags. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and it would be a bylaw.
It would be a bylaw. So, my understanding is that at the special town meeting, the voters, the residents will vote on this, and if they approve it, it's done. It doesn't go to a ballot.
By the Attorney General.
Yes, but it doesn't go to a ballot. If the residents support it,
It will become a bylaw.
it will become a bylaw with the approval of the Attorney General. If it is not approved regarding your motion, I would say that we then come back with this article again and to talk about forming a committee. But I think it's kind of moot to have it done now and have people working on it when the residents may vote for this particular. He needs to have, and I'm saying he because I think you're starting it, Mr. Woods, but he needs to have 100 certified signatures. I think he's seeking more, but he needs to have 100 to put it on as a warrant article. So I suspect he's going to get the numbers. Obviously, on September 15th, if he doesn't get it, then we can revisit this if we have to. But my gut feeling is he's going to get the signatures.
I will second that motion, Mr. Chairman, to table.
Is there any further discussion?
No discussion on a table.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Oh, your motion to, your motion was to table?
The table.
Oh, I thought you were.
No,
to
table.
continue. Oh, table, okay. I'll take a roll call
Aye.
vote. Selectman Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Campuchico's an aye. Any selectmen's reports and comments? Like I said earlier, I'm meeting tomorrow with to discuss the library, but that's all I have as far as reports. Dr. Z, have any selectmen reports or comments?
No formal reports. Actually, one thing. It's not anything related to the town, but I did want to let you know that my vacation has been postponed. So if we need to have a meeting, somewhere between when I was going to leave on the 25th of August through the 8th of September, I will be around as a last resort.
And I would consider that a last resort because we've changed the schedule a couple of times. And based on that schedule, some of us may have planned their own time away, so unless there's an emergency, and there may be an emergency, I don't anticipate calling another meeting. Right now, it's scheduled for September 15th. As
I
our
just
next
want
meeting.
you to know I'm available. There was a discussion earlier about, oh, well, we're going to go 3 weeks without a meeting. So I just wanted you to be aware that I would be around if you need to call a meeting.
It's actually 4 weeks, but
Oh, okay.
In light of the potential of at least 2 emergency situations, I totally, yes, I'm glad to hear that.
so if we need to have a meeting, I'll see what your schedule is, I'll see what Dr. Z's schedule is, and obviously I'm going to look at my own schedule since I've made plans. Thank you, Dr. Z, for that.
Thank you.
Do you have a selectmen's report?
Well, I actually have 2 things. The Water Commission District, they did not meet. Their meeting was postponed. And next Thursday, the Bristol County Board of Trustees will be meeting for their annual financial meeting to set the budget
Next Thursday.
at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next agenda item is new business. Review, discuss, and act on the appointment of Timothy Rhines as an at-large member of the Community Preservation Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we appoint Timothy Rhines as an at-large member to the Community Preservation Committee.
Is there a second. Mr. Rhines has been the chairman of this CPC in the past, and it's good to see him back. He's very knowledgeable about CPC. Any discussion? If not, I'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Ken Pacheco is also an aye. The next item is review, discuss, and act on the appointment of Matthew Pollux Jr. as a constable. We were presented basically with some information regarding him, as well as a list of those that he needs to have a list of those that say he's of moral character, and he's provided us with that list. Is there any question about this before I ask for a motion? If not, I'll enter. Yep.
Mr.
Dr. Z, yep.
Do we have any idea, maybe this is for Mr. Administrator, if we appoint Mr. Pollux as a constable this evening, how many constables would we have total? We had quite a few in the past. I know we pared it down.
I don't know what we have for,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
No
Mr.
further,
Brady.
I don't have any further questions.
Selectman Hull?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Matthew Pollock Jr. as a constable to the Dayton Police Department.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Ken Pacheco is also an aye. The next agenda item is Broad Cove Trail link to Old Somerset Avenue. I noticed what we got on this is regarding an email that was sent back on June 7th of 2017. Is there anything more that's
Yeah.
updated on this?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just really to provide a context, I believe, for a while now, there, has been a desire by the town to look into land, actually not owned by the town on the Broad Cove Trail. And as a result of the conversation that the Board of Selectmen had with the Trails, with the Trails Committee, at the end of last month, I know there was a renewed interest in perhaps looking at that. And the chairman of the Trails Committee had been in touch with Mr. McKeon, who was part of earlier discussions as is trying and working with us on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to see if there could be an opportunity for discussion. And I know in talking with Mr. McKeon, he has expressed that if the board would so like, he could reach out to the party and see if there could be an opportunity for discussion.
You have any questions regarding that?
Actually, a question and a statement. I'm not quite sure, it says in the agenda to act, and I don't quite understand what we're being asked to act on. That we have Mr. McKeon work to negotiate this, or that we support the Trails Committee in their negotiations with him? I'm not quite clear what the
So I
motion.
apologize. The ask or what the board will be acting on, like, is to allow Mr. McKeon to reach out to the owner of the parcel and to see if there's any interest. That would be the act, and then if there is, or anything, all that information will be reported back to us.
And
Selectman
actually
Hull.
a statement. I commend Mr. McKeon. I believe he is no longer working or involved in government on any committees. He's retired. And for him to reach out and put extensive amount of time and willing to volunteer to negotiate this, Mr. McKeon should be commended and thanked for his efforts. This is a very important piece of land for the successful completion of that trail. And I'd like us to reach out to him and thank him for his efforts.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Well,
I
Mr.
have a question.
Z has a
I
question.
didn't see his hand up. Yes, Dr. Z.
I agree that this would be a really big boon for the town if we were to acquire this link. But my understanding of where the situation was left off, and I do actually, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask Mr. Woods a question, because I believe he might know the property owner and be familiar with the situation as well, meaning the town trying to acquire this link. But I thought the way the situation was left off was that the owner did not want to be contacted by the town anymore. And I don't know if anyone in the audience or anyone on the dais has any more information on whether that has changed before we reach back out to them.
So, Mr. Woods, do you have anything to add to that? I don't know what your knowledge is on this, so.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Mr. Woods, but I think you
I know,
do.
thank you. I happen to know the landowner very well. And as Brett's aware, and Mrs. Goulat, who stepped out, there was a lawsuit. Mr. Mello won. The town disregarded him. He was at a meeting when the Boy Scout wanted to do this trail. He said, my family owns this property. He provided documents and he provided pictures of his family farming the land over 100 years ago. But the town totally ignored this man, put the trail through anyway. And it took 4 or 5 years in land court, but he won in land court. So I saw it on the agenda today and I reached out to Mr. Mello. Mr. Mello does not want to talk with the town of Dayton, but his attorney will. So that's where he's at. I mean, he was really wronged in the first place, and he was insulted. And I don't want to elaborate anymore as to who was involved, but you could reach out to his attorney, but Mr. Mello's looking for a lot of money. He'd sell it all to you if you got enough money.
Sure.
But I don't know, you're going to be up against a rock and a hard place. That's all I know.
Selectman Hull, I'm not sure, you have a question for?
Mr. Woods, if
Yep.
at all. Mr. Woods, Mr. McEwen, does he have a,
Mr. McKeon, he is no longer a resident of the town of Dayton.
well...
He's a great man, he's done a lot for our town, but
Yeah, no, I believe, well, he's a resident in another
Yeah.
town, but he still has a home here.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
He's not a voting resident
Right.
anymore.
But does he have a friendship with Mr. Mello? And he's also an attorney, so would he be willing to?
I don't know if he has a friendship with him. I don't know if you know Mr. Mello. You know Mr. Mello.
Yes, I do.
Tough
But
guy.
I know that there were issues.
Yeah.
But I also know, like yourself, that there are certain people in the community that Mr. Mello has respect for. And he's also seems to be open, an olive branch or a light
I'll
opening
talk
of
to
the
him
door
again tomorrow.
for negotiations through his attorney. And where Mr. McKeon is an attorney, I just thought, especially if Mr. McKeon's willing to do it on his dime rather than the town's dime.
You know, while I'm up here, right, let's talk about Boy Scout projects, because they come before you all the time.
One came, I believe, last week, was it last
Right.
week? Yeah.
But like a few years ago, somebody wanted to put one on Susan Circle. And the whole entire neighborhood showed up, was against it. But the Board of Selectmen at that time still granted that Boy Scout permission to put that park there. And like all the neighbors said, you know, that floods a lot. And the people on the Board of Selectmen back then says, oh, we haven't had a big flood in a long time. So this Boy Scout built a really nice park. And the next year, a huge flood came and took it all away. So you really need to listen to the residents and the taxpayers and the abutters. Because every single abutter up there on Susan Drive showed up, was against it, and it was still allowed that Boy Scout to do it. And that park is no longer there. It's got washed away.
Yeah, just for the record, we weren't board members at that
Right.
time, so.
Just
I'm
like
not
that trail
familiar.
never should have went through there,
Well-
but it went through there. And now there's a fence, so. You know, before we do any more big Boy Scout projects, let's do our homework.
Now, on this one,
Yeah,
you're
I'm gonna
going,
work on that tomorrow.
thank you.
If he's willing to make a deal, I'll let you know. That's all I can do.
So-
I mean, it's a beautiful trail, and I like it myself. But
So perhaps we can put this on the agenda for the September 15th.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion to table, or?
Wanted to make, would you be willing to make a motion to continue this to September 15th?
Yes.
Is there a
So
second?
moved.
Any,
Second, yes.
any discussion? If not, Selectman Hull, how do you
Aye.
vote? Aye. Campuchico is an aye. Dr. Z?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, thank you.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is to review, discuss, and act on the Community Compact Cabinet Program. Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to bring to the board's attention a letter and backup information that we received, the town received, from the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth on the 9th of August. And we are eligible to apply for the community compact grant programs again. In terms of the best practice programs, and then the outline in the packet also lays out the IT grant programs, the efficiency and regionalization grant program, and a new municipal fiber grant program. And you will note that there is an upcoming deadline for the IT grant program, but the efficiency and regionalization grant program, that application period doesn't open till actually January of 2022, and the municipal fiber grant program actually opens later than that, in terms of March 15th, 2022. What are being accepted on a rolling basis, which actually we are eligible to apply for again, is the Community Compact Best Practices Program. And I printed out a whole outline of all the best practices that have been established by the Commonwealth. And there are a range of them in every category. And we have a little bit of time because actually there is a rolling grant application process for us to really talk about this. But I just wanted to actually raise a few for you that I've been looking at just for the board's consideration. Actually, one is in the financial management best practice, and that would be to develop and utilize a long-range planning forecasting model that assesses both short-term and long-term financial implications of current and proposed policies, programs, and assumptions over a multi-year period. In light of the financial management review that is going to be starting in October, this could be one aspect that could really build off that. It really let us especially as we move forward with the capital planning, really help us plan forward where we're going financially. There was also, in the public health best practices, building off of what we talked about earlier this evening, there's a best practice to assess the challenges posed by recent public health crises and identify an opportunity for building additional public health infrastructure and staff capacity. I thought that could be helpful based on our discussions as well. And finally, I want to have a conversation with Superintendent Ferry about this as well. But in terms of a transportation best practice, there is a best practice to develop a pavement condition index that rates like our street and roadway conditions as well. So those are the things that I have identified as possible opportunities so far, but I wanted really to provide an opportunity for the board to weigh in and comment and share any feedback on thoughts as well.
So my question is, did we apply for one of these last year? Do you know?
It wasn't last year, if I may, Mr. Chairman. It was the year before you arrived. It was right in 2017, and we did do best practices. I think some of these are new, like the municipal fiber is new.
Yes.
But what we did in 2017 was the open space and recreation plan, so we can conserve and respect our open space. Right to farm, and we created an agricultural commission, and then we also invested stormwater management. And I just want the audience and the people watching to be aware that there were also financial implications and financial gains for the town because we implemented these measures. So because the Stormwater Committee is rocking and rolling and working on the stormwater bylaws with the health agent, who is also the stormwater agent technically, we're able to bring in big permit monies through stormwater management permits and things like that. So it has been advantageous. To answer your question, Mr. Chairman, it was 2017, but it took us a couple years to get it done.
Okay, because it says you can't, I thought we did, but it says you can't apply if you applied in 2020, fiscal year 2021. So. Selectman Hull, do you have any questions?
No, I can't.
Dr. Z, do you have any questions?
Mr. Administrator, I apologize. I couldn't hear every best practice that you had mentioned, but I wanted to run something by Selectman Hull in particular. And it's just based on what I know your interests are as the selectman. And I think one best practice that the board might be able to agree on, and I'm not asking for an agreement tonight, I think we need to review these thoroughly, because there are a lot. But I did notice under housing and economic development best practices, one of the best practices is to create an economic development plan that engages diverse stakeholders, leverages local and regional economic strengths and assets, encourages innovation and entrepreneurship, and/or promotes workforce development planning and implementation. I think that, and I can't see your facial expression, so I hope you're smiling, but I think that is something that would really benefit the town. And I think as we reinvigorate and revitalize the development Industrial Commission,
Yes.
I think that they may want to play a role in an economic development plan as well. And I think that might be something that everyone can agree would benefit the town.
Selectman Hull?
Could I just respond through you?
Yes.
Dr. Segoffis, I totally agree, and excellent idea. And it's something we definitely will focus on. We have a lot of work to do with that committee. It needs to reorganize, and it needs a focus, and this certainly would be something, beside reorganization, it would certainly be a very meaningful task. Thank you.
So we don't have to act on this right away, but we should give it some thought. I hope everybody's reviewed the information that we were given before the meeting, part of the packet.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do you want us to, So what we did, I can only speak to, and I see Selectman Goulart in the back. I can only speak to what we did the last time, and I think what we did was each selectman picked one, and that was and then that's how we arrived at the 3. So I don't know if that's what you want to do for maybe September 15th, if you think we'd have enough time. What are your thoughts?
My concern is that we're not going to meet for a month and we're going to have a lot of stuff on September 15th, but it's worth considering. Is that what's happened in the past, Mrs. Goulart?
I believe so. We're talking about the industrial development.
The best practices for CCC, Selectman Goulart.
Oh, sorry, I was out of all for a bit. Yes, when I brought that in, we had this giant spreadsheet, like a menu, and it was Selectman Cronin and Dr. Z. When I said, hey guys, what do you think? They were all on board. So we spread it out and we looked at areas we were interested in, and each selectman, because Dr. Z picked the agriculture and came up with a commission. Obviously mine was stormwater, and Selectman Cronin picked what he thought, but that's how we did it. We only had to file one project for best practices, but we were so enthusiastic, we decided to go with all of them, and they got approved. But we only needed one to get on the, let's say, the good list for grant funding. Yes, he's right, that's exactly how we did it.
And we get approved for all 3?
All 3 of our projects got approved, which I think when the Lieutenant Governor Polito came to award us the certificate that day, most places don't file 3, they do the minimum, and no one had done agriculture. So she pointed out that that was the first time anyone had ever submitted for a best practice the formation of an agricultural commission. So that was another, certainly a feather in Dr. Z's cap, but also in the town.
Thank you. I agree, we should have, if that's what's been done in the past, then we should, at the September 15th meeting, come up with our own ideas, and I believe Selectman Hull's probably already picked his.
And I notice here that one of the best practice recommendations, prepare a capital improvement plan that reflects community needs. So that, what if you wanted to grab that, it'd be huge.
That's really important, and in fact, before Town Administrator Mullen arrived, I had put a capital improvement plan as sort of a goal for the Capital Outlay Committee. So that would be directly in line with things that we have identified as being important for the future of the town. So I totally agree.
So I'm leaning towards the financial help that's mentioned in here, since I'm on the Capital Outlay Committee, so that's what I'm leaning towards. So we'll see how this goes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just an addition. So expanding our public education program was the best practice for stormwater, and that's the project that when we got it approved, we filed for a grant, and we initially got the $2,000 to use for the bags, the blue bags and the grippers. And because they thought it was a great idea. So it was almost like we got approved, and that funding, we got the approval. We waited for the money, but we got the approval. So that was beneficial financially. Small amount, but we still got it.
Thank you for that. So we can put this on the agenda for September 15th. Any other questions about this? If not, we'll go to correspondence. This correspondence, I got CC'd, but this is for our conservation agent, Lisa Caledoni. As a resident of Dayton for 43 years, I am writing to convey the opinion that the town government has made a mistaken decision. Oh, God. Do you mind, Selectman Hull, if I take my mask down?
No
while I
problem.
read this, because
No,
my
no,
glasses
go
are
ahead.
steaming up. As a resident of Dayton for 43 years, I am writing to convey the opinion that the town government has made a mistaken decision to allow a solar farm to destroy 8 to 10 acres of our local forest on Pine Street. The trade of trees for solar power is not an intelligent one, considering that we are dependent on trees for oxygen, and also considering that the town permits more and more housing developments to destroy forests as well. There is much national discussion of such practice as not green, Indeed, open land is the best area on which to place a solar farm, land where there may not be a need to plant trees for the sake of breathing. I asked the town to take up the discussion in an honest way of what constitutes actual green practices, including the temptation of monetary gain for tree destruction. The town resources are precious to us all, and this is from Dr. Mary Bell Hawkins. And Lisa did respond to it. I'll read her response to this. Good morning, Mary. I apologize for the delayed response as I was away last week. I do not disagree with you about the fact that clear-cutting forests for solar farms is not green. In fact, I have said on more than one occasion, it would seem more beneficial if we could locate the solar farms on already cleared spaces, parking lots, etc., and redevelop those. From a Conservation Commission perspective, if a solar project is proposed and it meets all of the wetland performance standards, as well as the Town of Dayton's Conservation Commission bylaw setbacks, and if the Commission determines that the activities which are subject to the permit application, which will result therefrom, are not likely to have a significant individual or cumulative effect upon the resource area values protected by the bylaw, then we are obligated to approve it. Unlike housing developments, the town requires solar proponents to put up a bond so that once the town lease is over, the property will be reforested. Additionally, it appears that the state incentive for solar farms are being redirected to discourage state funding on properties that are wooded. Also, I know the state's solar program pays solar companies less for power than generated by panels sitting on land that used to be forested. Thanks for voicing your concerns. Sincerely, Lisa Caledoni.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that from the Stormwater?
Yes, Mrs. Goulart. Yep.
I agree. I don't think anybody is happy with clearing forest lands, whether you're going to build houses or solar farms or anything else. However, I think we have to point out a few things. First of all, most of the solar farms have gone on chapter land, which means they may have been landlocked, or they were fallow farmland or something else. The taxes on them are half of what the normal taxes would be. So some of them have gone on fallow pasture land, but a lot of them have grown up into trees. Yes, that has happened. All of these projects come before the Stormwater Committee, and we enforce the bylaw and the regulations. I mean, you've been at our meeting anyhow, and anybody can watch them. It's not an easy process. It's not a blank check and stamp them and you're welcome, you know. An important fact financially, economically, is solar farms do not add children to our schools. We have no control over 40Bs or other approved housing developments, and I'm not anti-children by a long shot. By the same token, we're all concerned about providing facilities and our taxes. A solar farm gets minimal services from the town, which would be police and fire if needed. That's why we're so strict about building the road into it so that the public safety can access it if they have to. We don't have to build infrastructure. They build the roads. Anything they need, they must pay for. And it has to be built to the standards of the appropriate people here in town. Building inspector, highway superintendent, health agent, whoever. We get tax money. We negotiate pilot agreements. With the help of the Department of Revenue, their guidance, as Attorney Gay said at the town meeting, this is the way to go. And as you know, the ones that we've had approved, they're front-loaded. That means the highest money is paid to the town, and we will be asking the town, how best should this money be, whether you set it aside in special accounts or whatever, all right? So we're planning long-term, we're looking down the road. This is not short-sighted at all. And as Mrs. Caldonia said, there are decommissioning bonds. If they don't take down the structures when they're all done, that bond will be pulled. We'll take it down, and we'll use the money to return the property to as near original condition as possible. So this isn't just, you know, it's not like strip mining, quite frankly. There are plans. The other thing is, yes, people have complained about this town is allowing these solar farms. However, this town, both through the Board of Selectmen, through the Conservation Commission, and a town meeting, more than one town meeting vote, has acquired land for open space and recreation. Conservation Commission now owns most of Broad Cove. Now, we acquired the property on Brook Street, the Segregansett River area. Conservation acquired Council Oak 2 land. We accepted a gift from AstraZeneca of 3 lots that are treed and bushy and brushy and whatever. Again, open space recreation. It's not like we're allowing things to be demolished or whatever and just not doing anything. When property comes available, a board, a commission, or whatever, if it's coming out of chapter, has to notify the Board of Selectmen. We're interested in that. So that's another thing. The other thing I will point out is, yes, there has been opposition to solar farms, and Mrs. Caledonia is right. If they meet all of the requirements, you can't deny them. But I will also say, the public, if it really wants to, does have a say, because I remember it was probably around 2014 or 15, there was a large solar farm proposed for the side of Richmond Hill that would be most visible from Main Street. The people in the area literally rose up and went to the planning board, and they expressed opposition to the trees and the effect of the wildlife and the general life of the people that live on Richmond Hill, on Estherbrook and the other road up there. It did not get approved, okay? So, I don't want people to think that this is a willy-nilly thing and anybody coming through the door with a solar farm proposal that we're saying okay. But, other than the fact it is clean energy, there are boards and commissions and employees in this town who have taken action to protect the interest of the town, keeping in mind, we don't like to see them all cleared, but there is a plan in place and there is definitely benefit. So I just put that out there. Thank you.
Selectman Hull?
Mr. Chairman, to add on to what Mrs. Goulart said, Dayton is quickly developing a reputation as a leader in solar farm management. We have some really good bylaws and requirements for people who are trying to put in solar farms. And those bylaws really take into consideration appearance and minimizing the impact in the neighborhoods. Another thing that solar farms don't do, in South Dayton, water is a major issue. Solar farms do not tax our water system. It's already taxed. It's mentioned in the report that once the lease is up, the land is reforested. So those trees are replaced. And lastly, land that goes to a solar farm, more than likely, if it wasn't approved for a solar farm, would probably be approved for a development. People don't just give up land for no reason. They usually want to make some money out of it. So they have an intent to make money. They have a choice, a development or a solar farm. There is an individual in this town who recently put together an agreement that helped sell me the idea of the pluses of solar farms. And many of the things that I've expressed today, this individual he hasn't started building yet. I saw a lot of positives that he pointed out. And one of the things that he said was, yeah, I had 2 choices. I could put a solar farm in, or I could put a development in. But the one thing that wasn't going to happen, I wasn't going to just leave that land vacant, because I need money for my future generations of children and grandchildren. And I thought it would minimize, and this is the very important part, a solar farm would minimize the damage to the town in regards to services, tax dollars, and also to the environment.
Thank you. Dr. Z, did you have your hand up? No? No?
I just wanted to say that I think Selectman Hull really pinpointed all the important parts on the issue. I think we all agree, especially you and I, Mr. Chairman, with the sentiments certainly outlined in Ms. Ball-Howkin's letter. But I just think, just my experience and certain things that have happened over the 5 years that I've been here, I think the choice often isn't between a forest and a solar farm. The choice is often between a solar farm and a development, or a solar farm and a house. So, yes, we all want to maintain our forest, but the town has no control over what a private resident wants to do with their land that they own. We give incentives, right? The state certainly gives incentives with things like Chapter 61A and Chapter 61B and all that. But the second someone wants to sell their land, all bets are off. They've made a decision that they want to sell the land for a profit. That is their right as a landowner. However, I think just we can all agree that if we're gonna pick between a development or a solar farm, we should pick the solar farm. And I understand people don't like to see them. But I will say, I do think the zoning board and the planning board have done a good job in enforcing the restrictions, giving the restrictions, but also beefing up the bylaws that govern things like the solar farm. So I agree with the sentiment, but often the choice is not the choice that's presented in their mind. It's a choice between more students in the school or a solar farm. So
Thank you.
those are the choices we get elected to make, Mr. Chairman, as you know, the choices.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one other comment. When I talk pilot agreement, those taxes are on the personal equipment, meaning the solar panels and everything they're connected to. The person who owns the land that was in chapter at the lower rate, it comes out of chapter, it gets developed, they are now being taxed real estate at the commercial rate. Those taxes go into the regular
General
tax
fund.
receipts accounts that help fund the operation of our town. So there are two taxes involved. So there's a gain in the tax that we receive on the property also.
I think the concern that she has, and quite frankly, a few of us have, is that the development on Pine Street, that it was clear cut and was just, I mean, it was forest before, and all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but the trees are all gone, so it's kind of shocking. I prefer solar farms on farmland. That's not, I think, either you or Selectman Huller mentioned that, fallow land. But we don't have that choice. That's not a, I thought at one point the bylaws from the state for solar farms was that you can only deforest a certain percentage of the land, but I guess that's not true. I wish they would come up with something like that, but it's out of our control. It's a benefit to the town, a solar farm versus a housing development, but it's still tough to look at.
Right, and as I brought to you maybe a month or so ago, the legislation that MMA was talking about for reforestation, that's still out there, and it's going to be pursued. And the good thing is, when solar farms go away, the land is there. It's not like it's developed and it's not going to be anything except, whether it's a housing development or anything. The land is now freed up again for use, and it can go back to farmland, it can go back to lumber, whatever. So that's another plus.
Thank you. The next agenda item is, we received a email or a letter from Jessica Daly. Good afternoon. Please use this email as resignation from the Open Space and Land Use Committee. Respectfully submitted, Jessica Daly. I'll entertain a motion to accept her resignation.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the resignation from Open Space and Land Use Committee of Jessica Daly.
Is there a second?
I will second that, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? If not,
Yes, I just wanted to thank Mrs. Daly. I was fortunate enough to work with her on the Open Space Committee as the liaison to the Board of Selectmen. She was very, very pivotal. I think this puts the Open Space Committee back into not having a quorum, unfortunately, even though we did get the Open Space and Recreation Plan done. However, I don't know if we want to highlight them again or put them on the agenda, but we had wanted to work on an open space residential design bylaw, and we were going to work on that with other relevant committees. So that stinks now.
Selectman Hull?
I have a question, because I may run into the same problem with the industrial development. How can you get new members on board if you don't have enough members to have a quorum?
Just advertisement.
No, the approval process.
Right.
Oh. That's a
Can
good point.
if they don't have a quorum, can that committee be bypassed and come to the board for our approval?
That's a question for the town administrator, I guess. I would think that they would be able to come to us.
Yes, I would say yes, because
Somebody-
that-
Somebody would indicate that they're interested in a particular committee, there's no quorum, and will come to us, I assume. The committee members can have input, but we would make the final decision, I would think.
I'll give you an example. I won't mention names. I hear about the open space committee that may put them below their needed number for a quorum. So they can't recommend someone. But I do know from my trying to recruit people to become more involved in committees that there is an individual who is interested in applying for this committee. So they could submit an application
Absolutely.
to Mrs. Brady,
Absolutely.
and then we could vote on it?
Be brought to our attention. The committee
Yes,
should
and the
also
board
be,
of- and the Board of Selectmen are the appointing authority anyways.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, so the fact that, like the fact that that a committee is currently unable to meet, as long as the Board of Selectmen as the appointing, as long as the Board of Selectmen as the appointed authority approves it, it would be fine.
Because I'm, like I said, I've been asked to do a presentation, and I've kind of been reluctant to come before this board to do it, simply because we haven't been able to have a meeting, because we haven't had enough people for a quorum. And I'm trying to get some members on board, and I do have some that are interested, but I didn't have an understanding of a vehicle to get them approved, so we can re-get those committees started. So, thank you.
Just point of order, Mr. Chairman, or just clarification. The recommendation thing we started, that really was started more when we had certain committees that were always had enough members. There were usually never any vacancies. With the open space committee, it's we ebb and flow between these periods of, because the open space plan took 7 or 8 years to make. As you know, life happens and people come and go. So I think that I guess just to answer your question, Selectman Hull, we are not going to be choosy. We have a lot of new members on the open space committee. In fact, I've only been there a little, maybe a year or less. We will take anyone. We're happy to work with anyone. We're happy to show anyone the ropes. We can't make a recommendation, obviously, or they can't make a recommendation, but we would literally take anyone. We're happy to have anyone on board.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
so perhaps at the next meeting, I know I'm adding all this stuff to September 15th, we should go down the list again, which we've done in the past of all the committees and the number of people that they need to have put on that committee, or they're seeking to be put on that committee. So I'm going to call for a vote on this. Selectman Hull? This is on the resignation.
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Appreciation, aye.
And Campuchico is also an aye. The next item is, I'm looking for my glasses, usually it's on top of my head. I apologize for the delay in my response. Please accept this email as my resignation from the Dayton Human Rights Commission. Thank you, Lisa Minor. She had actually left a few months ago, but she never submitted her resignation, so I appreciate the fact that she's now submitted the resignation. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we accept the resignation of Lisa Minor with thanks and appreciation from the Human Rights Committee.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those, roll call.
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Campuchico is also an aye. The next agenda item is acknowledgements, recognition of anonymous donor who paid for the employee Christmas in July breakfast. We had, in the past, we've had a Christmas celebration, holiday celebration for the town employees, and the selectmen would come up with the money to provide the breakfast for them, and they'd be here for a little while, and they would do shifts. They wouldn't leave their department empty. Because of the pandemic, we weren't able to do this past December of 2020. Mrs. Goulart, former selectman, Mrs. Goulart has suggested that we do it in July of this year, which I thought was a good idea. I give her credit for coming up with the idea. It wasn't my idea at all. And we did that. In July, we had a breakfast for the town employees, and we were going to all be given a figure as to how much it cost each individual. Well, somebody apparently donated all the money for the Christmas in July breakfast. It's anonymous, so I don't know who it was. But we want to acknowledge and appreciate the fact that they did this. So thank whoever it is.
Yes, thank you.
Minutes. Approval of the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting minutes of March 30th, 2021. I understand you weren't a member of the Board of Selectmen, so I know even if you reviewed it, you wouldn't necessarily know whether those minutes from March 30th were correct. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 30th, 2021.
So moved.
I'll step down and second that. Any discussion? If not, I'll call for a roll call of the vote. Selectman Hull?
Present.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Campuchico is also an aye. Approval of the warrants. You have the figures?
Yes, I do. The warrant for August 18th, 2021, 7A-22, $100,875.21. Warrant Article 7B-22, $172,089.24. Warrant Article 7C-22, $64.13. And warrant Article 7D-22, $1,386,355.75.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll call for a roll call for a vote. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Campuchico is an aye. Public input. Is there any more public input?
Mr. Chairman?
Oh.
I got one very little one, something I found out today. Yeah,
Ladies first.
thank you, Mr. Woods. We were talking about the flags on Center Street and Route 138. It's my understanding that the utility poles on Center Street from the bridge up, at least to the school, are going to be removed. They're putting everything underground. So, I happened to mention this to Mr. Ferry. He says, I got the flags. I said, we can still use the flags, because we've got to do the highway. But I was talking to Mr. Aguirre, and we're coming up with something else that we'll bring to the board later, but I just wanted you to know, I will follow that up. But at the Stormwater Committee meeting, when we had a break, I was talking to Attorney Mitchell, who is on the board, and we were talking about that, and he happened to mention that that's what they're doing. So, I guess flags on the utility poles, that's not going to happen. But as I said, Mr. Aggie and I thought of something we've seen in travel, so we'll get some details. But I just wanted you to know that, and we'll see. And Mr. Ferry knows, so.
And I think,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Selectman Goulart a question before?
Sure.
Are you thinking along the lines of what they do in Rehoboth, where they have the flags on those thin standalone metal poles?
Well, actually, again, this is only Mr. Aggie and I talking. I drew a picture for, not that I'm an artist, for Mr. Ferry. You know what a shepherd's hook looks like, a double shepherd's hook? Only it would be taller, because what we have seen, he's seen it in Utah, I've seen it in Canada. The pole is mounted in the sidewalk on one side, or the highest part of the hook, because they won't be even, but the highest part will be the flag. On the other side, there is a hanging basket with flowers or seasonal whatever. And what Mr. Aguirre said was, gee, if we did the flags, maybe the school would want to do the basket. Again, anyone hearing this is just all discussion. But yes, what you're describing, well, it's a little different from Rehoboth, but something that we could still have the flags so that when you come over the bridge, you got that panoramic view and you got the flags there. So I don't know if that's going to work or not, but I just wanted you to know that I heard about the utilities today.
No, thank you.
I did not know that. Thank you. Mr. Woods.
Yeah, I'd just like to touch a little bit on the conversation that you were having about the solar. I'm the vice chairman of the planning board, and the planning board is the special granting authority for special permits. And we have been extremely tough on solar developers, myself mainly. I don't know if you watch any of our meetings, but I've been real tough on solar. And like Mr. Hall brought up about our bylaws, we have some very strong bylaws. And in the town of Dayton, you're not allowed to see a solar farm from the road. And we put the solar farm on Tremont Street and Middle Street. We really give those people a hard time. And at their very first meeting, their attorney said to me, they said, oh, Mr. Woods, that was the first question they said. Mr. Woods, we've noticed that you voted no on the last 2 solar projects. And I said, well, thank you for noticing. I hold their feet to the fire. And I just want the residents to know that if you do own a parcel of land, a big tract, it's your prerogative what you do to it. But as far as the planning board granting a permit to any solar developer, we just don't pass them out like candy. We look at every aspect in our zoning bylaws. And we have some really good zoning bylaws, and the only one that we need to tweak, and we are talking about tweaking it maybe for the annual town meeting, is the buffer zone. Because the buffer zone is very small. It's only 50 feet. And sometimes we can negotiate with the developer, like we did on the new one that's gonna be going up on William Street. We did get them to bump it back to 150 feet near one of the residents' homes. So I don't want any, like the letter that you received tonight, or any other resident out there who's thinking about putting solar, to be worried about it. I mean, we are gonna do the best job that we can to make sure that they're done correctly. I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you. Selectman Hull?
And in regards to that person that Mr. Woods spoke about, giving them a tough time, and he's the one that really sold me on the solar farm. He respected and understood why. I mean, obviously, it was tough for him, and it was an expense.
He wasn't too happy with me for the first few meetings.
Yes, I didn't want to.
In the end, it worked out good.
Yes, but the bottom line was, he respected you and respected the decision of the board because he understood why it was being done. It was being done to protect the town. It wasn't an attack on him personally.
Right. Yeah, and it was hard to get that point across, but in the end, it all worked out.
He got it. He did.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public input? Anybody on Zoom, public input?
He had his hand up, I don't know.
Who had his hand up?
Brett went, I don't
I
know.
think he's just fixing his glasses.
Oh, okay.
No, I do have a question for you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When we were discussing the community compact cabinet earlier, we're not hooked into the best practices. We could possibly still choose, for example, the municipal fiber. I'm just throwing this out there, right?
That would be a question for the town administrator.
Yes, Dr. Z, the municipal fiber is separate from best practices, and that grant process wouldn't open till next March anyways.
Oh, okay, okay, I thought they were making you choose one of the 4. Okay, I understand now, thank you.
No, best practices is its own entity, and other best practices, I believe I heard based on conversation, that in 2017, that communities were allowed to choose 3. In the letter, and in the letter from Lieutenant Governor Polito, it does actually say that eligible applicants can choose up to 2.
Oh, okay. The only reason I asked, Mr. Chairman, about the municipal fiber is that's something that we've discussed as coming from the bridge, over the bridge to the municipal campus. So, okay, I'll look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session, and we will not be reconvened. Under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, I so declare, negotiations with Dayton Police Officers, Mass Cop 306 update.
So moved.
Second?
Second. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Campuchico is an aye. So we're going to be going into executive session, and we will not be reconvening.
Could I just?
Yes, I got to speak. to Mrs.
I'd
Clark.
like to just make a comment in regards to this meeting this evening, especially in light of the previous 2 meetings. I want to thank the public for their input. This evening, there were a lot of positive ideas exchanged and a lot of help. Mr. Woods, Mrs. Goulart, thank you for your input. Deeply appreciated. It was a good exchange.
So we're going to go in executive session. Mrs. Goulart, I need to speak with you before you leave.
Yeah,